So, just introducing Prem again, we're starting some research together and embarking on something that I find like I'm so giddy about this. There's brain tumors that are the most devastating, cancers known to medicine that include things called glioblastomas and different variants of them. This metastatic cancer, people's prognosis is around 10 months. The last months of life are horrible, and there's really no treatments for them. We spent an enormous amount of capital on treating these tumors in the last few months of life. You're talking about millions upon millions of dollars. A single patient will cost a couple of $1 million. We will prolong their lives, maybe another couple of months, few months, so prognosis is 10 months, 11 months. And so what we're embarking on now is a project where, in conjunction with Kettering, the idea will be to put nanoparticles into the brain. And these are smart particles that go to the tumors, and we hopefully will be able to heat them and kill tumors, kill tumor cells. And of course, we're so excited to work with Kettering to hopefully launch this project and maybe put a real dent in tumors unlike we've seen before. So it's very exciting. And thank you very much for coming. As usual, tremendous amount of work you're doing, and maybe this is really going to turn something around for the patients.
Sure. So thank you so much. And as Dr. Shah mentioned that we are embarking upon a Phantom trial, and I thought that before we do the trial we can review what has been done in the past. So that's what the title of my presentation is going to be today. So here's I don't know whether we can enlarge it. Could we make it a little bit bigger so everybody can see it?
I don't think it's possible unless we move this machine back a little bit.
Or can we do it from here?
Yeah, just move the computer. Guess not. That's probably the best way to do it.
So here's a list of trials which has been done in the past. And maybe we can start with the 1999 by Jordan. Jordan is the guy at Berlin in Germany. And he did this trial in vitro. In vitro means the cancer cells were infected. But then there were some other workers, 2001, 2002. But the same guy did this work in 2007. And whether we have this one, where he did work on the human brain tumors. And again in 2011 some work was done by the same group. But the rest of the work is all on animals. And so there is very, very few work done on human trials. And this is our attempt actually to work with the humans on this kind of work. So this is my plan, that we will talk about the clinical trials which has been done, and then we'll talk about our experiment on head phantom, and we'll talk about what the future directions are going to be in that way. So this was the first trial done by Berlin group, and this guy Andrea Jordan is the head of that, and there is a reference to this work published already in Journal of Neuro-Oncology in 2007, and this is where I got this information. So just to tell you that in hyperthermia what we do is that we take the magnetic nanoparticle, inject those to the tumor, and then apply magnetic field, and by this we can produce heat, and that heat will kill cancer cells. So this trial was conducted on about 14 patients. And the magnetic fluid which is used was aminosilane coated iron oxide nanoparticles. I don't have any, but you'll be able to see that these were, the magnetic fluid was aminosilane coated with superparamagnetic iron oxide, The size of the particle was about 15 nanometers, and the concentration is also very, very important. This is kind of a little bit higher concentration, which is 112 milligram per milliliter. We would like to use microgram, very small amount. And the field strength was about 8.5 kilo ampere per meter. These are all numbers. I don't know whether that makes sense to you or not. But the frequency of the field is about 100 kilohertz. These are the parameters which are used by Jordan. But now people know that if you multiply these numbers, 8.5 and 100 kilohertz, it should not exceed this number. So this number is kind of a magical number. People have found that if you keep the product of H and F to be 4.85 times 10 to the power 8, then you are not going to be producing any eddy current in the human or the brain material, which can prevent the damage of the brain. So this is the kind of number we should keep in mind, that the product of field and frequency should not exceed that number. So what they did is that this is the first part. When the patient comes, they will remove all the metallic part from the patient. That's what actually they did. From the head and neck area and teeth implants and all those, unfortunately, they have to be removed. And they will take an MRI picture of the patient. And this is again a protocol you have to follow, that when you are taking MRI, you have to do all those things. And then based upon that, you are going to produce a three-dimensional picture of the tumor area. And then magnetic nanoparticle will be injected to that. So this picture, next picture, is going to show you the MRI picture. This is where the magnetic nanoparticle, so this is the area which is affected by GBM. Magnetic nanoparticles are injected into it. And this is the picture where they show the magnetic nanoparticles are kind of accumulated in this particular region of the tumor. So it's a pretty interesting picture showing you the magnetic nanoparticle going right into that tumor area. Then there is an artistic picture of what is happening. As you will see that there is a fiber cable which goes and measures the temperature of this tumor, and the blue area is where the blood vessels are, blood is going through this, and you have to create this kind of picture actually, so show that this is where the tumor is. So once we set up with the MRI picture, then you have to kind of inject, and for injection you have to kind of select different areas, maybe few points, that this is where the injection is going to be given. And those locations you can kind of separate by about 8 to 10 millimeter. Let's say that the tumor is about 5 centimeter. So you can create maybe 5 or 10 locations which may be at a distance of 8 to 10 millimeter. And then you install the magnetic fluid, and so the technique uses neuro-navigational control. The company which makes those is a Medtronic company. I think they have an office in Minneapolis. And they did it under general anesthesia, which is not necessary. I think it could be done without anesthesia.
Mm-hmm. We have the stealth machine at McLaren too, but then if we do it without anesthesia, the patient moves a little bit.
Okay.
So that way it just keeps it more accurate.
So injection of the magnetic nanoparticle were performed throughout non-resection, recurrent or primary tumors. So if you have a primary tumor which has not been treated, so you can give it to this, or if it is resection, surgery is done, removed, or there is a portion left over, or there is a recurrent tumor, so you will put those nanoparticles in all those areas. and it has to be injected very, very slowly. The reason being is that if you are going to do it very fast, then you have a fear of increasing the pressure. You don't want to increase the intracranial pressure inside that. And you want to do this at an interval of 30 to 40 seconds, again to prevent that increase of pressure inside that. And typically at each location you want to give about 0.4 to 1.4 milliliter of the fluid. Let's say that you have 4 or 5 of locations. Each location will have this amount of fluid inside that.
So it's really, it's diffusing into the interstitial tissue
That's right.
more so than going intracellular.
That's right. So there are all kind of very interesting questions that whether hyperthermia is going to work when these nanoparticles are going into the cell or they are outside the cell. And it is true that if they will go inside the cell, it is going to be more effective. But if it is not going, nothing to worry about that, because the heat is going to kill the cell anyway. So both theories are correct. If the nanoparticle goes inside the cell, that's very good. It doesn't go, if it is surrounding the cell, heat is going to kill or destroy the cell. So, but the amount which is given to each location varies only up to about 1.5 milliliter, which is maybe less than a small drop of the material. Later on I will show you that these nanoparticles can kind of uniformly distribute inside the cancer cell, which is the important part of heating mechanism. So this was their method, that once they give the injection, then they kind of seal it by some kind of glue. Again, I think that would be a good idea to seal it, because you don't want the fluid to go anywhere else, stay in the location. And they had a catheter after putting to that, so that you can kind of control the amount of nanoparticles which are going inside it.
And then, of course, the temperature probe.
So the temperature probe is maybe next slide. You have to have, yeah, of course you have to have a temperature probe at least at 2-3 locations, so that you can monitor temperature everywhere inside that. At least 2-3 places you can see, maybe one at the top, another at the bottom. So if you have 4 of those, then I think this is even better. So you can find the average temperature. This is one of the challenges of hyperthermia, that measuring the right amount of temperature. And you have to have temperature at least 5 degrees above the normal temperature of the person. If it is a little bit more, it's good, 5 or 6 degrees. And that way, I think you can make sure that all the cancer cells will be killed by the heat. So how do you measure the temperature? So usually we use fiber optic cable. You cannot use any metal, because the magnetic field will heat the metal. So you want to prevent that. So fiber optic cable will go into, and it will measure temperature up to accuracy of 0.1 degrees C. Now this is a kind of a thermometry data of the patients. So as I said, that there are 14 patients, although this one is missing on this side because of the slide. But so they put numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 14 patients. I was looking at that, some of the patients were kind of missing, because this study was for the recurrent GBM. It's not a new one. Then these are the tumor volume, so you can find out how big is the tumor. And through MRI or through other like CT scan or something like that, you can find out this is the tumor volume. Then implanted depots, that means how many places you put the nanoparticles. So in the first case, for the first patient, there were 5 locations where the nanoparticle was placed. Second one, it was because the tumor volume was very small, 5.2 milliliter, there was only one location. So the third column gives you the location. So this is kind of pretty nicely documented picture, and we have to do all those things. When you go and treat a real patient, then you have to find out what is the tumor volume, how many places you are going to put the nanoparticle, and what is the amount of nanoparticle or the liquid of that. Just like for the first, it is 1.5 milliliter of the material which was given to them. The maximum temperature which was measured was 43.7 degree, and I think they also use fiber cable to measure the temperature because that's the most accurate. The calculated temperature, because what you can do is just like I'm going to show you, that you can calculate the temperature based upon the magnetic field, that this is the amount of temperature is going to be creating. So that was calculated. So calculated was much higher than the actual temperature, and you can understand why this is so, because you have all kind of blood vessel around the tumor, and when you are doing the calculation, you are not taking account of that there are blood vessels, and those can kind of reduce the temperature. But the measured temperature is always going to be lower than what you are going to be calculating. So these are other treatment numbers, and there are some other parameters they calculate. We can look into that later on.
And the greater than 42 degrees Celsius is the percentage of time that the Tmax was above 42 degrees. Is that
Right,
what
right.
that's what that column
That's right.
And the idea is you always want it so above 42,
To above 42 degrees.
and then below.
Below will not affect those cancer cells, so you like to have a temperature higher than that.
What's the high threshold for the temperature?
So the high threshold is maybe 50 degree, around 50 degree. And at that moment what happened that it completely kind of burned them totally. So there are two processes, apoptosis and necrosis. So necrosis is where they are going to kill all the cancer cells.
I see.
So 50 degree or above, sometimes they call it thermoablation.
So that's where it would be dangerous then.
That's
for
the
the
dangerous.
normal. So
You
this is
don't
dangerous.
want to go to that,
I see.
because that can affect also the normal cells, and you don't want to go to that high temperature. Okay, so then we come to what happened to this study then. So number one is, which is very important, that this procedure was tolerated by all patients. There were not major issues. So all patients in the study tolerated the installation of the nanoparticle without any complication. So the installation was the first part, so there was no complication, and we don't anticipate in that. Could be that there could be intracranial pressure going up, but since it was injected slowly, so there was no issue with that. Side effects like headache or nausea, or vomiting or allergic reactions, those were also not observed. These guys did not see that. Or there was no neurological deficit or infection that the patient started laughing or crying or something like that. It didn't happen then. Okay. And there was no trauma in giving those nanoparticles to the patient. And again, as I said, that I think if somebody is going to be careful in injecting slowly and taking time in between injections, then I think it could be pretty good. Swelling of the brain and rise of intracranial pressure was avoided by slow injection, and they did not see anything like that. Now this is important. The medium injected amount of nanoparticle was 3 milliliter in the range of 1 to 5.5. So the amount which was given was about 3 milliliter to that. And the median was about 0.2 per milliliter of tumor volume. So depending upon the volume of the tumor and depending upon the concentration of the nanoparticle, you may have to vary that amount. say for example you have 100 microgram per milliliter of the solution, and the size of the tumor is, let's say, 5 centimeter cube. So you have to kind of multiply that number by 5 so that the whole volume is going to be covered by those nanoparticles. And in this particular case, I think as I mentioned that they had 3.8 to 13.5 kiloampere per meter. Now this is kind of very interesting. I don't know how many of you have the background that how do you produce magnetic field. It's very simple. You take a coil and you pass a current through that. That current is going to produce magnetic field. So kiloampere, that means that current is thousands of amperes per meter. Per meter is the length of the turns. So if you have a coil, let's say 5 centimeter, you will account that into calculating that magnetic field. So general formula is Ni over L. So H equals to Ni over L. N is the number of turns, I is the current, L is the length of the coil. So that current is really very, very high because you want to produce a very high magnetic field. And that magnetic field will be able to penetrate the brain matter and the skull and all those things. And I'm going to show you a picture later on that that magnetic field will interact with those nanoparticles, produce heat inside. So maybe I can write it here so you can remember that. This field which you are going to be producing. So here's the coil. So this is the length of the coil. And N is the number of turns inside that. And I is the current which is flowing through that. So when they say kiloampere per meter, so basically the unit, if you look at that, it will be the unit of current divided by length. And current is ampere and length is the length of the coil. And this is a very important parameter. There are actually 3 things which are very important for hyperthermia treatment. Number 1 is the magnetic nanoparticles. These nanoparticles have to be in the size of about 20 nanometers. You cannot have particles bigger than 20 nanometers. That's number 1. These particles should be functionalized. That means they should have some kind of coating on them. So they are not going to be sedimenting. So they will remain in the solution. And then you have to have a field. So that field will go and interact with those nanoparticles and field with a certain frequency. So in this particular case, they had a frequency of 100 kilohertz. And the field they had is 8.5 kiloampere per meter. So if we multiply these two numbers, this comes out 8.5 times 10 to the power 8, whereas this number should be 4.85 times 10 to the power 8. So this is a common practice that we should try to keep this number low. How can we keep this number low? We can reduce the frequency or we can reduce the field. So the power which is going inside the brain is much lower, and when it is lower, say for example this is the picture of the brain and this is where the tumor is. So when you apply field here, then what it does is that it starts heating this area. You want to minimize heating this area. And this you can do it only by keeping this product low. This is a kind of a common practice. People have done all kind of calculations to find out this magic number. And since this is the product of these two numbers, so you can try to reduce those. So people have gone this field really very, very low. So that it's not going to producing what is called as eddy current. Actually, I was going to bring a device to show you how you produce eddy current in a magnetic field. Maybe next time I will show you that. But you would like to keep this number kind of as low as possible, lower than that number. So you are not going to be hitting the other part of the brain. Okay. So only minor side effects were observed. Some patients even reported pleasant feeling of warmth in the head because there is a heat produced, so this okay, this is getting kind of pretty warm, so it's very nice. One patient suffering from, so there was one patient who had some trouble with heart disease, so his blood pressure went up and something like that, but then he was treated, he was okay. Hemiparesis, somebody saw that, disappeared within 24 hours. Controlled CT did not reveal any brain swelling or bleeding. These are the side effects of that. The brain can swell because of the extra fluid going inside that. Or somebody can have bleeding because maybe some of those vessels which are kind of leaky, they can rupture and you can get some bleeding, but these are all very, very temporary effects. Okay. So here's another very interesting table, and I was just reading this DWD. What does that mean? That means that without disease. That means what? That person got cured. So he died, of course, not due to this disease or GBM, died with something. So this is a chart of what is the status of these people after the disease. And DOD means dead of disease. So these people, just like Dr. Shah mentioned, that the average time is maybe 10 months. Maybe the extended period is 10 months. Some patients will die in 1 month or 2 months or 3 months or like that. So it's a kind of horrible disease that way. And a lot of patients will say that even if you can increase 1 month of my life, then I think that's a great gift to that particular patient. So again, these are, so first column is male or female, how many males, how many females they have. KPS is kind of a very interesting number. Dr. Shah can elaborate on that, but this number shows that if we are 80, the number is 80, that means you can do most of your functions. That you can get up from the bed, you can go and brush your teeth, you can go and cook your breakfast, you can eat and all those things. But if this number goes to 40, that means you cannot do anything. It's called as Karnofsky number, and I just looked it up in Google and I said, okay, what is this number? So that if the number is 80, so I did say some number 70s and 80s and 100, one or two, maybe there is only one with number 40, that means the patient is lying in the bed and not able to do the routine work. So these are the tumor locations in the brain, parietal and temporal or thalamus, and looks like more parietal than other locations. And first line of therapy. So this study, in this study what they did is that they had hyperthermia along with radiation. So first they give the hyperthermia, that means they will heat the tumor, and there is an advantage of doing that. So when you heat the tumor, what you are doing is that you are making the blood flow kind of efficient. Blood is going to flow really, really very well, and therefore the oxygen is going to go into that area. Typically all cancers are hypoxic, that means they have lack of oxygen. So if you will heat them, it will increase the amount of oxygen going inside that, and therefore they will be more receptive to radiation or chemotherapy. So in this particular trial, Jordan actually, he had hyperthermia first, and then there was a very, very mild radiation. So the combined effect of radiation and hyperthermia was really very good. for these patients. And this is where this therapy is going. There are very, very few people who are doing only hyperthermia. Although we say theoretically that, okay, cancer will be killed by heating the tumor. But along with that, if radiation is given or the chemo is given in a very, very mild way, then I think it can improve the chances of patient very much. And I think they mentioned that they give about 60 grays of radiation for very small amount of time.
So when there's the time, so when they first diagnosed the tumor, nanoparticles were not used. So it's after the first recurrence? Is that?
So all these patients are recurrent patients. So they may have gone through radiation or they may have gone through chemo or maybe surgery. But then it came back. Then at that time they use the magnetic nanoparticle and they use also a small portion of radiation.
So when you say, when we have TTP2, that then is the amount of additional time they got with the nanoparticles and radiation?
Yes, so this is time from intervention, re-intervention, second.
So re-intervention is that what, when the nanoparticles then?
Yes.
Yes.
So the first one was, as I said, that it could be radiation, it could be combination radiation or chemotherapy. But then it came back, and GBM is kind of really very notorious for that. It doesn't go away very easily. So this was the second trial. So this group is really one of the best group in the world right now, which treat cancer, GBM especially, with magnetic nanoparticles. It's in Berlin, and the person is Andreas Jordan, and he has actually approached FDA in this country that he would like to bring his technique to USA where he can treat patients. So it's probably it's in the works right now, but it has not been approved by FDA. And maybe our technique will be eventually through FDA, or the purpose is to, we want to make the patients kind of well by doing this procedure. So in this trial also, I think they had radiotherapy and magnetic nanoparticle, as the title says, that they have an external beam of radiation and the magnetic nanoparticle. This is a little bit bigger trial. There were about 59 patients involved in that. And as I said, that these are the only two trials in all those trials in the world where people have been, or humans have been treated. Rest of them are all animals or in the petri dish or something like that. So, first line of therapy was resection or radiotherapy or chemotherapy, and these were the number of patients. They were treated by the first line. And when they came back, then patient with prior treatment following tumor recurrence 24, resection 11, radiotherapy 2, chemotherapy 17. Now KPS number for them really went up to 90, so between 60 and 90. Performance was 46. I don't know what this performance score is. Age was median range of 55.7 years. Less than 50, about 23, more than 50 was 36 patients for this study. And I don't know whether you can see this picture, but the picture at the top is the original picture. When they went to the hospital, they took the picture of that, and we have too much background light, but you will be able to see that this is the area where there is a tumor. Then the images C and D So white area is where the magnetic nanoparticles were injected. They were injected and they were deposited in that. And what happens that then, and I'm going to show you that when you do this mapping of magnetic field, you can find out that what is the temperature in that particular region. So you have a blue line where the temperature is 40 degrees Celsius, a red line where the temperature is 50 degrees. So as you go inside, the temperature is going to be varying because of the magnetic field and the location of this. You cannot say that here you have temperature of 40 degrees Celsius and it will remain 40 degrees. You may have a range of temperature at the site of the tumor. So here's a kind of a overlap of CT and I think this may be more like an artistic picture where they are again showing you the blue and the brown and this fiber cable to measure the temperature of the tumor. So green line is, or green picture is, the fiber cable measuring the temperature, and the other areas are, and as you will see that tumors are never well defined. You cannot say that they have to be spherical. They always have a kind of irregular shape. And therefore you have to be careful that the magnetic field which you provide or the nanoparticle which you inject, those nanoparticles are kind of uniformly distributed. It's not that at one place you have more nanoparticle, another place you don't have. You don't want that. You want to have the uniform distribution of those and then uniform temperature. So this is kind of really very interesting picture. So this is the picture of a cancerous area in the brain, GBM, and these nanoparticles were injected, so you can see that these black dots, these are the magnetic nanoparticles which are inside the cancer. It's a very interesting picture. This is a picture which shows where the cancer is, so you will see that this is kind of a